Join us as we help my in-laws plant what is almost a year's worth of potatoes for my family, my in-laws, and my brother-in-law's family. So we end up doing about 100 pounds of potatoes. Here is my mother-in-law cutting them up into pieces just so that each piece has one eye. We do about 100 pounds of Kennebec potatoes and 25 pounds of Red Pontiac potatoes. We really like the red for eating and they're done earlier, but they don't store as well, which is why we have the Kennebec.
But is there seeds in those?
No, they're not seeds, but see these little eyes?
Yeah.
Okay, those will sprout and they'll come up through the ground and they'll be the green stuff. Okay, and this will die.
Okay, why do you get potatoes that look like that, and then make them into new potatoes?
So we have more potatoes because they taste better than the store-bought ones.
One of these will make a whole bunch of potatoes.
You take one potato and
You
you
know
make
all
like
them
70
things
potatoes.
we've eat? We just had 2 sacks. But think of all the boxes of potatoes and all the buckets of potatoes we picked up.
So you did 50 pounds, and then how many red?
25.
Okay.
But we've got 2 whole rows of red because the red ones was little. And I cut them in 2. They had good eyes on them. So we've got 2 whole rows and
Of red.
almost 2 more.
Have you already planted the red? So as my mother-in-law is cutting the seed potatoes, my father-in-law is dropping the fertilize, and they use 10 fertilize. Now, before we got there to help, they had already planted 25 pounds of Red Pontiac, and then we helped them plant the Kennebec potatoes. Put its eyes towards the sun.
Eyes towards the sun. These two heels. The heels toward the sun.
Look, them are the eyes. The eyes go towards the sun.
So they can get vitamin D.
Yeah. Y'all got, no, look. Y'all put them right here. Right next to the fertilize.
Oh.
On each side of the fertilizer.
Yeah, like iron.
And then
And so there ends up being 2. See, there ends up being 2. Because you put one on each side of the fertilizer.
got to add some more. Give me some taters.
I've got a 12-inch, but I think if you can fish off one of them, just do 10, 12. I got a 12 and I've got.
So as you can see, once the fertilizer is dropped, we kind of go in behind and put a seed potato or a chunk of a seed potato on each side of the fertilizer. This doesn't take that long because we've got a lot of hands doing it. And then once we put the seed potatoes in the ground, somebody comes behind and covers them up. Here you see my husband covering them up, and he doesn't cover them up super deep now because my in-laws will come in later once these start to come up, and they'll till in between these, and that will heal the potatoes up even more later. So we planted those potatoes on March 27th. Now let's head over to my garden at the beginning of April and join me as I put some broccoli in the ground. Okay, we're going to put this broccoli and cabbage in the ground, but first I wanted to stop and show you the strawberries on the way. So they are looking really good. And I even noticed, let's see down here, we have a bloom. And we have the first bit of color here. So here at the end of the video, I'll give you a tour of where the garden is at now. But first, I was just marking off kind of where I wanted to plant the broccoli. We've had a lot of rain, and so I really needed to break up the ground where the broccoli was going in. So here you can see gardens are not all like they appear on YouTube and Instagram and Pinterest and all the places. So this is my garden, and it has lots of gravel in it. And the reason there's a lot of gravel is as we were building our house, a load of gravel actually got dumped basically where my garden is. We knew this was where the garden was going to be, but there was just some miscommunication or whatever, and it didn't get mentioned that we didn't need a load of gravel dumped there. So here I am picking gravel out of my garden, but things grew last year, and Lord willing, they will grow this year as well. It's fine. Okay, so these are what I think is very, very root bound. And they are, I think, because they grew too much in these seed trays, because we already have broccoli on them. And I'm pretty sure this is not the variety that I wanted, but this is what we've got. So we're going to plant it, and we will make the best of it, and maybe I will start some of my own and try it again in the fall with the variety that I was thinking. And with the garden hoe, and then I'm pulling these out. I do not think this is the type that I wanted, but I didn't start my own, so I got what I got. So they're pretty root bound. I should have watered them yesterday and I didn't. So I'm gonna soak them just a sec, get them really wet. I'm gonna pull off this end because I need these roots to grow. And I've got them spaced about 12 inches apart. And so we'll just keep going and see what we can get done. So even though this isn't the variety that I intended to grow, it'll be an interesting experiment to see how it does grow, and then we will learn from there. So maybe one day it will not be so windy that I have to take the voiceover out, but here I'm just telling you that I've planted out the 20 packages of those, or not 20 packages, but 20 plants of that broccoli, and then 4 head of cabbage. And then as I was out, I noticed all of these that had kind of volunteered themselves from last year. Now in this area of the garden, I had sunflowers and zinnias and cucumbers. I'm thinking these are zinnias, but there's some of them that I'm actually pretty positive are sunflowers, because there was what I'm pretty sure was a sunflower seed still attached to the leaf of one of them. So I just dug them up, and then I moved them to the end of the rows, and so we will just let them grow and see what they are. And now I'm gonna get you up with me, and I'm gonna show you how everything else is growing. Okay, so I got that broccoli planted and the cabbage planted, and I actually went ahead and planted the carrots, but so I'll show you all of that right now and give you a look at what my garden is looking like. And again, the wind is terrible here, so I'm just showing you the garden. And this first section that we come to hasn't actually even been broke up for the year, but that's where the beans and the corn are gonna go. And then here you can look at the broccoli, and it's been a few days now, and I can tell you that all but one of these seems to have transplanted just fine. I do think I'm down to 19 plants instead of 20, but that'll be okay. And then all 4 cabbage seem to have transplanted just fine as well. And so then once you see here these little sticks marking, what I did here was I went ahead and I planted the carrots. And unlike last year where I just planted a single straight row of carrots, this year I made a bunch of little mini rows in this section, and so I was able to plant them a lot more densely. So I planted like 6 per column going up and down, and then I spaced each little column so here I'm showing you I went about 6 plants that way in a straight line, and then I spaced over about 2 inches, and then I did another line of seeds, and I did that during this whole section of carrots. So hopefully within that smaller section of the garden, I'm actually able to yield a lot more carrots by intensively planting. If you noticed if you were here when we planted the peas, I also planted the peas a lot more intensively this year than I had in the past. So we will see how that goes, but I have good hopes for it. And here you'll see where I've transplanted some of those. I'm not sure, whatever decided to volunteer itself from last year got transplanted there, and at the end of some of the other rows. Now that's my dirt pile, and I actually just got some more dirt delivered to fill some raised beds. There you can see where some of those volunteer plants are right there. And then here are the onions that we planted out. I showed you guys planting those. They all seem to have transplanted fine. There's a few that we seem to have lost, but overall they seem to have transplanted really well. There's that pile of gravel that I was telling you about. I'm just kind of picking it up as I go through the rows. It's not gonna stop anything from growing. It'll be just fine. And then here are the 3 rows of peas. The 2 closest to the grass there are shelling peas. And so they are, I can't remember what variety, but those 2 are shelling peas. And they are getting close to needing to be trellised, but we're not there yet. And I'm going to try a technique that is kind of like the Florida weave, but we're going to do that with the peas, and we're going to see how that goes. In the past, I've always done them on cattle panel, but because of how I planted them this year, and I just didn't really want to use the cattle panel this year on the peas, we're going to try this weave technique, and I'll bring you along as we do that. If you were here for the other video, they've got the garage done, so we're really excited about that. And then here I am just showing you in the lavender. It is overwintered really well, and we've got some new growth coming there. This is the first time that I've actually had my lavender to perennialize, so I'm really happy about that. I've got to work on cleaning the rest of this bed and that middle bed out. And then down there at the end, you will see where we are fixing the raised beds for the vegetables. So these 3 will just probably have flowers in them, and then this section is actually going to be a double keyhole garden down there for vegetables, and then the strawberries that I wanted closer to the house. The only other garden thing I may do today is I may replant some radish and some lettuces. I had those, if you saw the short, I had them on a planter box on my rail, but when all of the bad weather, the tornadoes and the flooding and things came through, I pulled my planter boxes down because I was afraid the winds would blow those off of there. And when I sat them down, our dogs and cats got into those planter boxes. So I do need to replant those, but otherwise that is the look at the garden.